We're here with Ms. Sarah Butler, the director of the Malachi McDaniel Academic Resource Center. Sarah, if you don't mind, could you give us a brief summary of how you got introduced to sports?
Sure. So, all growing up, my dad was an athlete and actually played like college sports and almost went pro. So, in baseball. So, a lot of our childhood was just sports. And we really got thrown into basketball, softball, volleyball, all the things. So that was just naturally a part of what we did. And then now as the director of the Academic Resource Center, and our campus is like 90% or more athletes, I get to work with athletes a lot, specifically focusing on eligibility, grades, goals related to graduating and after college. So sports have been a big part of my life growing up and even still now. So
That's awesome. So today we'll be focusing on the NCAA versus Fourqurean case. So the first question, in your own opinion, is how do you think the NCAA handled Fourqurean's situation, whether that's the right way, or what do you think in general?
I think they probably did the most fair thing. I think with NIL and eligibility, things have gotten a little bit out of control because there aren't many stipulations. So from what I know about his case, I believe the NCAA gave him an extra year of eligibility, approved 1 year instead of the 2 years. And I think that's probably the most fair thing, considering he did have time at a D2 school before that. And from what I read about him, he also had some like mental health things going on with the passing of his father. So I think they did the most fair thing possible. So
Absolutely.
All right, Sarah, our next question is, it pertains to the 5-year eligibility rule, and it's basically, how fair do you think that this rule is?
So with the 5-year eligibility rule, I do think that gives student athletes time to have experience and try to get things figured out. From what I can tell with that, I do think it is relatively fair. But I know with COVID, people got an extra year of eligibility. So I do think that is, again, I think the NCAA has a lot to consider, and I think that that's probably pretty fair to have the 5-year eligibility rule.
What message do you think this case portrays to other college athletes in similar situations?
I think based on what the NCAA ruled, I think that it does show, hey, we're willing to hear you out. But I think at some point they have to draw a line because, like I said earlier, there's not a lot of standards to go by related to NIL and eligibility, and each case is such an individualized basis, like specifically with this player where he had the loss of a father and then going from D2 to D1. I think it shows that the NCAA is trying to be fair and willing to hear people out, and hopefully that sets a good standard for the NCAA, but also lets players and athletes know that they'll at least be heard.
I agree with that. And then how do you think this case could impact the future of college sports and athletics?
I think it could cause for more, I don't want to say pushback, but like more players trying to advocate for themselves, because now college sports are so financially motivated with the NIL and with the ability to make so much money, especially because he moved to D1, he has so much more opportunity to make more money where he was at a D2 beforehand. I do think it could cause for more players to stand up and speak out when they feel like they need more time, or when they feel like there could be an opportunity for them to earn more money. Now, also, that does get a little sticky because they are still college students, and it's kind of like, where do we draw the line? You know, how much is too much? How much of a good thing is too much? So it's kind of both sides of it. Like, it's good for the players, but also there will probably end up being people who try to overuse that system and try to milk the system for more. So,
Absolutely. And do you think there's any other NIL opportunities or cases like Fourqurean's case that were just screwed over, that athletes that should have got an extra year or maybe shouldn't have got an extra year, and do you think we'll be dealing with that in the future, or will that just be a case that's always running along?
I think recently it's not necessarily the same exact thing, but recently the quarterback from Tennessee, he pushed back and was actually like sitting out practices and sitting out like team meetings and stuff because he wasn't happy with the amount of money he was making. So that's a little different than eligibility, but it still goes along with the NIL. And eventually Tennessee just said, we're not doing this. Like, you're not a part of the team. You're not a team player. And I think that's really interesting as well, because that considers or talks about, like, at what point does the player has to look out for themselves individually, but at what point do they stop being part of the team? Because that was kind of his attitude, is like, okay, here's what you can make individually, but are you still a part of this team?
Absolutely.
So I think it's just really interesting to think about how those things are combined, eligibility, NIL, because they all work together.
Yeah.
So I think we're just getting started with seeing some of these cases and how they're going to play out.
There's definitely a lot of different stances on all these cases dealing with the NCAA. But
Yeah.
thank you, Ms. Butler. We all appreciate your time, and this was a great interview.
Of course.